Could you explain how you think that right now Obamacare has started, it's been in effect for a few months, where you think the conservative response is or should be?
Well, is and should be, as always, are different things. I think that I think the conservative response should be, and I and many others have thought this from well before the time that Obamacare was implemented or even enacted. Conservatives need to offer their own solutions here. The healthcare system has been broken by the federal government over a period of many decades, not just under Obamacare. The incredible inefficiency that makes it possible at the same time to have more and more people unable to afford coverage and the federal government going broke paying for coverage is a function of federal policy. It's a function of the design of Medicare and Medicaid, and it's a function of the design of the employer tax exclusion that makes it impossible to have a working market with people making choices that drive efficiency and lower costs and higher quality. Conservatives have to move the system in that direction. What the Democrats have done with Obamacare is move the system in the opposite direction, toward a more controlled, a more managed, a more regulated system. And you know, what you see is rising costs. What you see is people who are unhappy, even those who are in the system, even those who are covered for the first time in many cases, are unhappy with how it is working. I think conservatives are in a position to offer an approach that would cover at least as many people, but in a way that makes the system better and that makes coverage more affordable for more people. Those kinds of ideas are out there. There's one in the book. We've seen some proposed in Congress. There's a proposal in the Senate from Senators Coburn, Burr, and Hatch that I think is constructive, moves in the right direction. I know that others are working on similar ideas. I think that's very important, and I think that conservatives, in order to repeal Obamacare, have got to propose their own solution, a way to address the problem, which is a real problem, caused by bad federal policy through reforms of federal policy.
Now, for a long time, the sort of heart of the free market critique of the American healthcare system centered around the tax code and the bias in favor of employer-based healthcare. But the Republican proposals that you've mentioned, including what you've argued for, leaves the employer system largely intact.
Yeah. Well, the critique wasn't exactly about the fact of employer-based coverage. The critique was about there not being consumers in the system, right? Third-party insurance provision throughout the system, which means the people getting coverage are not the people choosing what to pay for, and ultimately are not the people paying. And so there's no incentive anywhere for people to make choices that encourage quality, that encourage value, right, which is a balance of cost and quality. The employer system is a big part of that because employers are the consumers in that system rather than their employees who get the coverage. And so there are all kinds of mixed signals and there are all kinds of economic inefficiencies. The much bigger problem are the public elements of the system and the individual market, which is a total dysfunctional mess. Obamacare decided to make the individual market more like the public elements of the system. It's a highly subsidized and, more importantly, highly regulated insurance market through the exchanges. The first step to take is to deregulate that market and allow it to be a functional individual market in coverage. There would still be subsidies for people who aren't able to afford coverage, but the subsidies would work by allowing people to make choices rather than by forcing people to take what they're given. You know, Obamacare tells the insurers what they can sell, it tells the consumers they have to buy it, and then it says there's buying and selling here, so this is a market. What conservatives say is there has to be an actual market, because markets ultimately are a way of solving these kinds of problems, a way of finding more value-based ways of addressing economic needs. The employer system is part of that problem, but the way to address it is to create a functioning alternative in the individual market and gradually have people flow into that system, rather than, I think, to just kind of blow it up and expect that it'll work out very quickly. Republicans have tried that. John McCain ran on a proposal that was much more dramatic than some of what's being talked about now, and that really would have basically replaced the employer tax exclusion with an individual benefit. He was attacked for it. He was not very good at defending himself against it. But I also think it involved ultimately too much change for people who were satisfied. You know, you have to work with the political realities of a system like this, and so you've got to go, first of all, where people feel there is a problem, and then create a working system that acts as a model for the rest of the healthcare system. I think that's a more appropriate way, a more politically plausible way of solving this problem than telling people we're going to create even more disruption than Obamacare created, but trust us, it's going to move in the right direction. I think it would, but that doesn't mean that people should trust us.